The big game is fast approaching, but wait, you still haven't got your tickets. You've spent hours searching, but you're still confused about ticket prices. Time to stop searching. Visit ticketcompare.com. We compare ticket prices for all the popular leagues and tournaments for you. We work only with the most trustworthy sites, so you can have peace of mind when buying your tickets. Compare prices, buy tickets, get to the game. Ticketcompare.com. Buying tickets made simple.
Hi Roy.
Hi.
Can I start with some injury news, please, to start with?
Yeah, not an awful lot of difference. I think I said last time that Jeffrey Schlupp and Martin Kelly were close to return to full training. I think they'd done one session with us before the Spurs game, but they've trained all week, as best we can train, of course, like everybody else. But I'm counting on those two being fit, but they're the only two that are back, if you like, in contention. All the other ones who were injured before are still injured.
Is the weather affecting your preparations at all? It's obviously come on strong in the last 48 hours or so.
Yes, I mean, the fact that we're here at Selhurst Park, I suppose, shows that. But even today at Selhurst Park, we weren't able to train, unfortunately. Yesterday, the pitch was good enough to enable us to use one half of it so we could train, but today we couldn't train on the pitch other than to run in straight lines. So it has affected us, but I guess that's the case for many clubs. It'll only be those lucky ones that maybe have undergone under soil heating at their training grounds that may have survived it, but a lot of clubs like ourselves will have found it very difficult this week.
Now, Wilfried Zaha put up quite an encouraging video on social media the other day of him making progress with the shoulder presses, etc. How confident are you that he's ahead of schedule to return to the team?
Oh, I believe he's ahead of schedule. I think that's not only he, but the medical staff too are quite surprised at how quickly he's recovered from a serious injury. But of course, it's still a while away, I think, before we can be certain that he's going to return earlier than planned, because at the moment his running is pretty much in straight lines, and we haven't done those difficult things that need testing out for knee ligament injuries, i.e. the twisting and turning, and then of course the contact with other players when you get back into normal training.
It's perhaps oversimplifying it slightly, but you've not won a point without him. The club hasn't won a point without him in the team this season. Does that underline his importance and how important it is to get him back soon?
Yes, obviously I wasn't aware of that statistic, but every team, I think, is dependent upon its important players, its star players, especially the ones in the forward areas who are going to create goal chances and score goals. So it's disappointing to hear that we haven't won a point without him, but maybe we'll start on Monday night.
Your chairman made some interesting quotes this week. He said, "We're in a difficult situation, make no mistake. People ask what I'm planning for. I'm planning for the Championship." Now, as a manager, do you want to hear that from your chairman at this critical stage of the season, especially with everything you're fighting against in the table and with injuries?
I think probably the question really should be, do you want to hear quotes taken out of context and then have to comment on them at this stage of the season? That would be a more relevant comment for me. I think that it would be pretty obvious that, and I read the whole of the speech, if you like, or the interview that Steve gave, and basically what he's saying is what anyone would have to say if they're serious about their football club and serious about their business, that you can't definitely plan ahead on the basis that you will definitely be in one league or another. You have to take into account all the contingencies, and that seems to be what he's done. I know very well that Steve Parish, as the chairman, every bit as much as myself, the coaching staff and the players, we're all 100% focused on doing everything we possibly can to stay in the league. So I think it's probably a little bit unfortunate that a quote has been taken, not necessarily so much out of context, but it's a line in a big speech he was giving to other business people. He wasn't talking to sports people, he was talking to businessmen about the need to plan and make contingencies. And in football, unfortunately, unless maybe you're one of those very fortunate 5 or 6 clubs that never seem to get close to the relegation zone, all other clubs need to prepare for contingencies.
Is there any risk that your players, because lots of people just hear things, including ourselves, hear things in sound bites, is there no risk that your players might misread that and think that maybe he's lost faith in the cause?
No, I don't think so. No, I don't think so. Anyway, I'm sure he'll make that perfectly clear. He comes and sees both myself and the players on a fairly regular basis, so he'll have every opportunity to make it clear that it is a sound bite, and it's a sound bite certainly taken out of context as far as he's concerned. he was talking about a business model and the need to, if you're preparing a new stadium, you prepare to make a new stadium or build a new stadium, irrespective of where the team happens to be. I remember thinking the quote he talks about the club having existed since 1905 and it's going to go for a good few years ahead. So unfortunately, he must make all the contingency plans necessary.
How tough is it for you at the moment? You've had Tottenham, you've got Man United next, obviously Chelsea after that, you've got injuries as well. How difficult is it for you managing your squad?
Well, the squad's quite easy to manage at the moment because it's fairly small and it's really being boosted by so many under-23 players, many of whom have not done many training sessions with the first team and most of whom have not actually played in the first team, unless we take Aaron Bissaka now, who of course has made his debut. So managing the squad and managing the training sessions is quite easy because the numbers are very small. What I suppose is not easy is having to accept the fact that we have to go and play such important games and look behind us and see so many people in the treatment room that could have helped us get results in the game.
What do you make of the job Jose Mourinho's done at Man United this season? I mean, this was meant to be the second season where it was all going to come together. They were going to challenge for the title, yet they're still some way off Manchester City as things stand.
Well, they are challenging for the title. I believe they're second in the league. I mean, there's 20 teams in the league, and I'm afraid only one team can be number one. And if on a season like this, the team that is currently number one has had such a fantastic season and has really dropped so very, very few points, which has given them a big lead over the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, etc., then I think that's a little bit unfortunate if you find yourself in one of those second, third or fourth, fifth positions. I think he's done an excellent job. I think the club are doing extremely well, and certainly when you're talking to someone who's only thought every day as to how we can do the best we can do to possibly avoid relegation, to suddenly suggest that being second in the league is in some way shameful is a bit hard for me to comment upon.
Have you ever known a relegation fight as tight as this from, say, 10th, 11th downwards? I mean, you've been involved in one or two in the last 10 years or so, but I mean, nobody seems confident now that we're even into March that of which three teams will go down.
No. Well, I think with three teams going down, it's always it doesn't involve as many teams. With three teams going down, I think in March you're always having your doubts which three they're going to be, although occasionally one team does get divorced. But for the other two places, there's always a lot of speculation and a lot of concern for quite a few clubs that they're not going to get dragged into that zone. But everyone comments quite constantly about how unusual this season is, that the relegation zone, if you like, goes so far up the table, and I don't have anything to add to that other than to say it is unusual, but the bottom line is that there will be three teams relegated, and there's most of us at the moment working very, very hard to make sure it's not us.
Just finally, from me, I must ask you about VAR. I think you were broadly in favour of it at the very beginning. Obviously, you were involved in the guinea pig trial with Brighton in the FA Cup. I mean, after last night and the interruptions we saw, the criticism it's had, are you still resolute that you think it's good for the game, or it will be?
I've never been particularly for or particularly against. I must say I've been trying very hard to sit on the fence, and I was quite happy with the game the way it is, and with referees being given the responsibility to referee games and making mistakes from time to time. I've never balked at that in a long career, but on the other hand, I've also been very wary of being the person who tries to turn back the tides of time and to fight technology. So I suppose in that respect I could be accused of being guilty of backing it. What I've said all along and will continue to say is I think it is definitely a trial period for it. I think it's very important, if it's going to be brought in, that all the people in football, in particular the referees and in particular the managers and players, are in favour of it, because otherwise it won't serve any purpose. Its only purpose will be if it irons out some of the more obvious mistakes that are going to occur during a football match, and that everyone therefore is very happy to see that happen. At the moment that isn't happening. People are more critical of it than positive towards it. So I think there's a lot of work to be done if it's going to be presented as a step forward. need to get a lot of the people involved in it on board, and most importantly of all, I think you're going to have to try and get the managers and the players on board with it before the referees can have their say. And also you need to get the fans on board with it, and if the fans don't like the fact that games are being stopped to check out decisions, then maybe it's not such a good idea. However, it's also worth pointing out, if the fans are going to say we don't like it because it takes a bit of time checking out these decisions, they'll have to accept that occasionally referees are human beings. They get mistakes, they get decisions wrong, and hindsight and television cameras prove afterwards that he made that decision on the day in real time in the heat of the battle, but afterwards sitting in a studio watching 1,000 replays, we can actually now point out it was the wrong decision.
Okay, Mike.
Hi Roy, the fixture up at Old Trafford, I believe, was in your first 3 or 4 matches in charge here at the club. Bit of water under the bridge since then. What do you know now, and what have you learnt about your team and your squad since then that you perhaps didn't know 7 months ago?
Well, I certainly didn't know, and was fearful would not be the case, is that we could come from 7 matches with no points and no goals for and plenty of goals against. Basically 8 points in reality from being outside of the relegation zone. I didn't know then that the team was going to rally round and work so hard to, until a few weeks ago, get us 2 or 3 points clear of the relegation zone. So that was a very positive thing which has happened, and which I suppose I couldn't certainly predict after having lost 5-0 at Manchester City and then 4-0 at Manchester United. So there's no doubt that as a group of players, these players have made big strides forward. They worked very, very hard to become a better football team and a harder team to beat. And I certainly feel more confident going into this game on Monday night, despite the fact that we have quite a few players that I perhaps would have liked to have seen in the squad, still missing, that we can give a better account of ourselves than we were able to do up at Old Trafford. But it is a difficult fixture list coming up for us, and we are facing that with a few players who don't have an awful lot of experience at this level of football, and 1 or 2 that are bedding in, if you like. So it's a question, I think, of us trying to do what we've tried to do in the last couple of games, not least of all on Saturday on Sunday, I beg your pardon, against Tottenham Hotspur, and work as hard as we possibly can to keep our opponents at bay, while perhaps accepting that they might have the lion's share of possession of the ball.
I'd like to ask you about Jairo Rijderveld. We've just recorded an interview with him, and he mentioned in that when you first came into the club, you took him aside and said that you didn't know too much about him, but were looking for him to show you what he could do. He's featured in some recent matches for you. What is he showing you?
No, he's done well. He's right from the offset. It's clear that he was a very skillful football player. That was fairly obvious. So it was a question really of whether he'd be able to match up to the rigours of the Premier League and the tactical demands that we as coaches make. And for a long period of time now he's been doing that, and he's not been in the team quite simply because the competition for places in that central midfield has been very, very strong. But now, with Loftus-Cheek out for a long period of time, we've lost Johan Kabay now. All of a sudden the situation has become better for him in the sense that the competition has weakened, and he, during the time that we've been working together, in my opinion, has strengthened his candidature in all ways, because he's worked hard at his game, he's worked hard to understand what we're trying to do. He's come to terms with the fact that the Premier League is a very different league to the Dutch league, especially if you're playing at Ajax at the very top of the Dutch league. So he deserves every credit, I think, for what he's done to get where he is today, and we still believe he has a large margin of progression because he's still a very young player. Don't forget he still plays for Holland under-21s. We're not talking about, I know he's got a good record like most players who come from Ajax have got, because Ajax, they win things, especially in the Dutch league. But he's still a very young player, as is Fosu Mensah. In fact, Fosu Mensah, strangely enough, is a little bit younger than Wan-Bissaka.
And just finally from me, I just want to ask you about something else Steve Parish mentioned yesterday when he was giving his speech about...
Was it for sports journalists or was it for business journalists?
I wasn't there.
I'm just asking the question. I wasn't there.
There was sports.
Oh, was it? Okay.
I wasn't there either. I was just reading the write-up of it, and one of the things I saw was that Steve mentioned or talked about the possibility of Crystal Palace selling naming rights for the extension of the new stadium. As someone who has described themselves as a lifelong Palace fan, was on the Homestale Road as a teenager, is this just modern football that stadiums get new names, or would you be sad to see this place no longer called Selhurst Park?
No, I don't have too much sentimentality in that regard. I try to move with the times as best I can, and so I don't have any problems moving with the times in that regard. I don't know that, this is news to me, but it certainly wouldn't surprise me if most of the stadia in future that are being revamped or rebuilt, that they are renamed, and it can be quite useful when occasionally you get pointless questions about names of football stadia and you're still allowed to name the old ones. It's a great opportunity for you to get a few pointless answers.
Cheers, Roy.
Thank you.
I just wondered how encouraged you were, considering the injuries you've got at the moment, that you almost held Tottenham to a goal of straw.
Yeah, I was very pleased with the performance. There's no doubt about that. It was always going to be a very difficult one for us. You know, Tottenham have got a lot of big guns. They're in excellent form. They're unbeaten in goodness knows how many games. And of course, some of our injuries they were thrust upon us at late notice. So it wasn't even as if we had a lot of chance to bed the people in and prepare them for the game. So I thought that the players did an excellent job in terms of their work rate, in terms of their defensive discipline, in terms of their spirit. And of course it was such a harsh blow to get so close within a couple of minutes of normal time and to concede a goal in that way, especially as it took us all a bit by surprise, in the sense that, you know, I was preparing for Bissaka to clear the ball up the field when suddenly the whistle went and a corner kick is awarded, and it was absolutely impossible to see from our position where that ball could possibly have crossed the line. So it was a double whammy in that respect, I suppose. But it's something one has to accept. You know, the disappointment after the game was great, because, as I say, I think all of us thought we were going to hold out, and perhaps deservedly so. But it wasn't to be, and as a result, you then have to try and put that result behind you as quickly as you possibly can and get on with training. And I must say, training this week, what training we've been able to do, has been very good. Today, honestly, was the first training session that we were very, very hard pushed to get on the field and do anything like what we'd want to do. The previous three have been okay, so I think we might have to consider ourselves fortunate in that respect, because there are a lot of clubs, I'm sure, this week have not been able to get anywhere near a training field with footballs and to do any work. So disappointed, yes, but certainly not disappointed with the players' performance. And I think it gives us all heart that with that spirit, with that determination, with that tactical discipline that the players are capable of showing, and the hope that some of the injured players will be returning soon to bolster our squad, it gives us great hope that we're going to be able to mount a very serious challenge to get out of the relegation zone, whilst accepting, with the quality of fixtures we have up and the quality of teams we're playing, we might find ourselves back in the bottom three again before we find ourselves closer to the middle of the table.
You had said after the Tottenham game that maybe it was the youth and inexperience in the side, as well as tiredness, that possibly led to that late goal from Harry Kane. I wonder, there's not much you can do about that, is there, in a short period of time in preparation for another tough opponent in Manchester United? Well,
you surprised me that I said that. I certainly have no recollection of saying that, and it certainly doesn't reflect what I feel. What I remember saying, and what certainly does reflect on what I feel, is that I thought it was very unfortunate to lose James Tompkins, who'd been fantastic during the course of the game, and obviously was basically our senior defender in a back four with Bissaka, Fosu-Mensah and Patrick Van Aanholt. I thought it was very unfortunate that he had to leave the field 3 or 4 minutes earlier with that serious cramp. We had to revamp the team, and Damien Delaney had to go in at a very, very difficult time. And at that time, I think they had 3 or 4 corners on the spin. albeit one of them I wasn't too happy about, the one that caused the goal. And I thought that was unfortunate that had Tompkins been able to stay on the field, it would have been less disruption, if you like, in a back four that had been functioning, and maybe we'd have seen the game through. But I don't think I had any thoughts particularly about the inexperience of the players or the fatigue factor. We were tired, yes, but they were probably pretty tired too, because both teams, if you look at the statistics from the game, worked very hard in terms of their physical effort.
And finally for me, I just wonder what your relationship is like with Jose Mourinho. He's a manager that tends to divide other managers.
Well, not me. He doesn't. I have no feelings of division. I mean, obviously, I can't claim to be his best friend. I don't know him that well, but I have known him for a long period of time, and every time we've met, the relationship, I think, has been extremely good and extremely cordial, and I'm grateful to him during his time, certainly as Chelsea manager, for the help he gave me as England manager in terms of his support with the players, his recognition of the fact that, you know, it was never going to be a club versus country issue. He not only accepted the fact that I made demands on his players and wanted them to come and work with us in England, he actually encouraged it as well. So my relationship with him is very good, I think, and I of course admire and respect the work he's done over the years, not least of all currently with Man United, whom he's moulding into a very good team.
Do you have a nice bottle of red wine ready to share with him, or I don't know how that?
We have our specialist Crystal Palace wine, which is provided by Steve Browett, who's one of the leading wine distributors in the country. So it's perfectly good enough for us here, and I'm sure he won't balk at it either. And he's more than welcome to have a glass. But I'm not convinced that he's a great drinker, Jose, anyway. So. But he knows that he's always welcome to share a glass of the Eagle Red, as it's called.
Roy, sorry, one for me. You close to signing Diego Cavallero, goalkeeper?
Yes, we are, yes. I mean, I think everything's been agreed. It's a question of the paperwork now, so I can't announce anything as yet, but it's certainly moving in the right direction, and I hope we'll be able to make an announcement very soon.
Do you anticipate him playing much between now and the end of the season?
Well, we've only got 2 senior goalkeepers, so his chances obviously are great, yeah.